Well, howdy, folks. If you've ever spent any time at a movie theater or a bowling alley in the 90s, you probably played Sunset Riders. This awesome little run-and-gun game was developed by Konami and shipped out to arcades in 1991, where it captured hearts and minds and quarters. Well, eventually folks started clamoring for a home release, and Konami was happy to oblige with a Genesis version in 1992, and eventually a Super Nintendo version in 1993. Yeah, it took 2 whole years to bring the game to the SNES, but was it worth the wait? Or was it watered down and borderline unrecognizable like the Genesis release? And do you need this game in your SNES library today? Well, Pilgrim, slap on your chaps and let's find out. Now, when it comes to a thrilling narrative, expectations aren't exactly sky high for arcade games, so it won't surprise you to hear that this game really doesn't give you much of anything. The 4 protagonists are the eponymous Sunset Riders, and they're out collecting bounties on various no-goodniks. And that's it. I could talk about each character, and in fact, I will. First, we have Steve here, who I gotta say is kinda sinister looking for a leading character. I mean, I assume the guy he just shot deserved it somehow, right? Let's not think about that. Here's the next guy, and oh god, is he bad too? He looks exactly the same, and his name is Billy. That's 2 mean-looking guys with unremarkable names. Cool. Player 3, don't let me down. Okay, we really don't see his face here, and I'm getting Legolas vibes, but it's cool that he has a shotgun, and his name is Bob? Oh, okay, if player 4 is named Gary or something, I'm gonna lose it. Okay, hello, Sombrero. Now we're talking. I'm definitely getting wholesome Al Borland meets nodding Robert Redford vibes from this guy. And his name is Cormano. Like they went from boring names to not even a name. Let's not lie, I'm sure we all picked Cormano on our first playthrough. Speaking of playthroughs, let's actually play this game and see how it fares. Well, as you can clearly see, it is in fact a run and gun in the same vein as Contra, and it even has one-hit kills. Your guy could shoot unlimited bullets in 8 different directions, as well as jump, duck, and slide in order to outmaneuver the many enemy projectiles in play. Depending on who you pick, your character either has a revolver or a shotgun. Steve and Billy have the straight-shooting revolvers, while Bob and Cormano have shotguns that have a spread property. There are 2 main upgrades you can get, one which allows you to dual-wield a second weapon and thus shoot more bullets in more directions, and another which allows you to hold the button to shoot, thus allowing you to shoot faster. And when you're fully powered up with both, my god, are you a force to be reckoned with. Like, look! The Terminator can't even shoot like this. The poor town casket maker is probably watching this carnage thinking, Jesus Christ. So, needless to say, if you're looking for even a remotely authentic depiction of the Wild West, well, you're gonna have to suspend the hell out of your disbelief here. Another thing worth mentioning, it may seem like the shotgun is the better choice, and really it kind of is, but it has one limitation worth considering. See, you can only have a certain number of bullets on screen at once, and with a spread shot, you can get all of those bullets out in a relatively short amount of time. The problem is you can't shoot another shot until enough of those bullets are off screen, so sometimes you have a guy right behind you who you want to quickly turn around and pop, but you can't do that because your other bullets are still on the screen. Minor, but I think this was by design so that the shotgun wasn't too overpowered. Dodging bullets can be a bit tricky because your character is pretty big and therefore your hitbox is pretty big. If you're not careful, you can find yourself in an inescapable situation with no way to jump or slide out of it. And speaking of the slide, I gotta say I didn't use it much at all. The few times I did use it, I ended up sliding into enemy projectiles as opposed to away from them. But I will say I appreciate the fact that enemy bullets are flashy and easy to see, so there are very few bullshit deaths. Your character controls decently, and ultimately it is easy to play. If there was one thing I would criticize about the gameplay, it would be the fact that there just isn't much variety in the weapons. Each character technically only gets one weapon with various modifications. Even having something like a screen-clearing bomb assigned to a separate button would be awesome. Some enemies throw sticks of dynamite at you, which you could pick up and throw back. It would be awesome if you could just produce your own sticks of dynamite whenever you wanted. But this really just is more of a missed opportunity than a criticism. Moving through the levels, you're going to encounter all kinds of fun stuff. With an arcade run and gun, you want unique and varied levels that will encourage you to press onwards. Sunset Riders does not disappoint here, and each level is a fun gauntlet of bullets, bad guys, burning bridges, and boss battles. It begins by showing you a wanted poster for that particular level boss, which is a nice touch. Then it's time for action. Level 1 starts you off on what appears to be a farm. Perhaps it's your homestead that's been besieged by baddies. You could jump between the ground and the upper balconies, making for a more dynamic experience, and what is that? Why, it's a stampede of cattle that you need to jump onto and run on top of to stay alive. The first boss is Simon Greedwell, who looks like you caught him eating a rhubarb pie, and serves as a good introduction on how hard some of these bosses can get. Level 2 leans on the riders part of Sunset Riders, and sticks you on a horse to chase caravans and shoot bad guys off a passing train. This is probably my least favorite level on account of the fact that it's essentially an auto-scroller, as well as how easy it is to just park yourself here and spray the train down with bullets. There also aren't any power-ups, but I do like the vibe, especially when the train pulls away to reveal the boss battle with Hawkeye Hank Hatfield. Okay, see, now that's how you name a character, not Steve or Bob or bleh. Once you take him out, you get your first bonus level, which really is not that fun at all. It's basically a gallery shooter where enemies will appear in one of 8 places, and using the D-pad, you just need to push in the direction where the enemy appears and then press the shoot button. Sure, you can make some good money doing this, which leads to extra lives, but remember, this is one-hit kill, and let me show you how fast you could lose that extra life you've worked so hard for. Yep, there it goes. Level 3 sees you in a classic Old West town, complete with swinging saloon doors you enter to receive power-ups. It really is quite a fun level, and at the end you fight what appears to be a male stripper, who is actually quite easy if you just stick to the upper balcony. Next is another boss battle in the form of the Smith brothers, and the vibe of this fight is on point. You got a trashed saloon and twin bosses lobbing firebombs at you, as well as a swinging chandelier which you can jump onto and hang off of. You see how cool this looks? And let's not forget this little interlude you get here when you beat them. Now it's level 4, and oh look, the train is back, but this time we're fighting on top of the train, which is a fun little action movie trope that I always appreciate. The boss is El Greco, or Harvey Keitel in a sombrero, and geez, this guy is a joke. Don't bring a whip to a turbocharged gunfight, ladies and gentlemen. Then it's, oh god, another bonus level before moving on to stage 5. This level is an outdoorsy mountain area, and it's a little bit dull aside from some more rope-hanging antics, but the real showpiece here is the boss battle with Chief Wigwam.
Ready for powwow.
Yeah, I definitely know what you're thinking here, and as bad as this is, he actually had a different name in the arcade version, which was way worse, and well, I'll let you read it here. Anyways, he is hard, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is where most folks game over. And if you feel bad blasting away at this offensive stereotype, there is a bit of absolution after you defeat him, and his sister runs on screen and convinces you not to shoot him because he was just following orders. You still collect the bounty, however, which means you definitely threw him in jail. Oh well. Time to get back on the horse with stage 6, which is kind of like level 2, except harder, and with a few crappy deaths if you're not careful. You do dismount from your horse about halfway through the level and fight through the woods before encountering Paco Loco. I really don't know what to infer from this guy, but he's portrayed as something of an oaf. This battle is quite tough as well, with Mr. Loco on top of some kind of fortification, shooting at you with a Gatling gun. By the way, in what universe does a Gatling gun shoot like this, but a shotgun shoots like this? Anyways, we're not getting back into that. The last level is some kind of floating log fort, which somehow leads to an ornate mansion where you fight Richard Rose, the final boss of the game. Get ready for an ass whooping is all I'll say about him. Like I said before, the levels are varied and packed with action, and each boss level is unique. I do kind of wish that some of the levels were longer though. Level 4 in particular feels like it's over way too quickly. I guess I'd prefer that to long-ass levels that repeat the same shit over and over again, especially if I was pumping quarters into this thing. If you want to talk graphics, this one falls into the good, not great category. Everything manages to be bright and colorful without being ugly, which few developers can pull off. And while everything generally looks decent, nothing really jumps out as exceptional. The character sprites get the job done, but can look a bit amateur. And the backgrounds are good, aside from a bit of blandness, as well as some perspective wonkiness. But I will say at no point while I was playing this did I stop and go, this looks hideous. The character animations are actually quite good since they are the area it could be most tempting to compromise on. Smoother motion means more frames of animation, which means more sprites, which means more space taken up in the ROM. Sunset Riders makes economical use of its sprites, so while it's not smooth, it contains the important frames necessary to give off the impression of fluid motion. I'm also glad they didn't cut small things like idle animations or the guys running for their lives on top of the stampede. The explosions are also nice and big thanks to the use of Mode 7. Everything moves at a smooth 60 frames per second, which is mandatory for a run and gun, and there isn't a hint of slowdown, making this a pretty excellent experience from a performance standpoint. The music of this game really only has one job, and that's to capture the essence of an action-packed Western game. You've got these fun synth orchestral hits in the first level that get you pumped up. And then you have the classic spaghetti Western motif interpolated into the level 5 music. Then you have this hokey Yeehaw Roundup Hour song in level 2 that actually works well and adds to the whimsical vibe of the game. The sound effects are good, and thankfully it's more than just shooting, exploding, and power-up sounds like most run-and guns. You've got horse whinnies, galloping hooves, and train whistles when the situation calls for it. Although I do wish they had more than one guy getting shot sound, because you are going on a mass murder spree, so boy, you hear that sound a lot. Top marks needs to be given to the developers for cramming in the spoken dialogue. Every boss has a little catchphrase that they say before and after each fight, and some are downright iconic.
Marry me with my money.
Sure, it's compressed, but it's there. Leaving these out would have stripped so much character from the game. It's also great hearing this wonky approximation of how a cowboy talks.
Don't worry about it.
So, up until this point, I've done a pretty good job looking at this game on its own and not comparing it to its original arcade version. I suppose it's time we had a look at the original version just to see if this version does it justice. So, I'm gonna switch to the arcade version now. Oh god, here we go. This better not blow me away and make the SNES version look like garbage. Oh, I guess that's a little bit better, but by no means is it a quantum leap in graphics and performance. There are a few things we could point out, however. For one, the arcade version has more guys on screen and it's generally just busier. There are more enemies, more bullets, and more kooky little background things, like this hombre playing guitar at the beginning of the third level. We also get extra set pieces, like the train cars detaching in level 4, and this Gatling gun in level 7 that you can use to blast a gate open. It also moves a bit smoother with added frames of animation. Like, check out how smooth the cattle stampede is compared to the SNES version. And of course, I need to mention the big change in level 5. Let's see if you could point it out. What could it be? Yeah, I guess Nintendo of America figured a whole level of blasting indigenous folk was a bit of a bad look, so they replaced them with the usual enemies. Either that, or they didn't have space on the cart for the extra sprites. And I also would be remiss not to mention the censorship. The original arcade game was a little more bawdy in its depiction of the Old West in a way that made Nintendo of America uncomfortable. So some stuff was excised, which sucks because the naughty stuff really added a ton of character to the game. Like in the arcade game, your dude can duck into what I can only assume are brothels and get a power-up and a kiss on the cheek from a scantily clad woman. In the SNES game, there's only one door with a woman in it, and it's at the beginning of the game, and she's dressed a little more modestly. Maybe there's only one so your character appears less promiscuous? Maybe they're trying to pass her off as his wife saying, "Good luck," at the beginning of the game. Who knows? And of course the little go-go dance section sees the dancers with a lot less clothes. They still dance like grandmas though. And also, the arcade game includes these neat little animations that, while not gameplay integral, really pile on that extra bit of whimsy. Like Cormano catching El Greco's sombrero and wearing it for the rest of the game. Or Cormano smashing the whiskey bottle on his head. Or Cormano getting hit in the nuts after stepping on a pitchfork. Boy, Cormano really is the best character by a long shot, isn't he? And finally, the arcade version came in both a 2-player and 4-player version. So if things weren't chaotic enough, you can unleash even more carnage with all 4 dudes at the same time. Jeez, like, look at this. Can you imagine the collateral damage when these guys roll into town? Jesus Christ! Everyone get away from the windows! And some of these boss fights seem downright unfair. So yeah, the arcade version is obviously going to be better, but hey, you know what? I actually prefer the music of the SNES version. Like, listen to the SNES version of level 3 here. And now listen to the arcade version. I don't know, the arcade version just sounds dinkier. All things considered, this really is a great port of the arcade game that manages to cram in every level, character, boss, song, and voice sample from the arcade version without too much compromise. Now let's talk about value, or whether this game is worth a purchase today. Well, here's what it has going for it. First of all, it is a two-player game, which always adds value. It thankfully did not take the Final Fight route of completely eliminating multiplayer on the SNES. Additionally, the game ranges in difficulty from hard to really friggin' hard. You will get your ass kicked on easy mode, and by upping the difficulty you get faster bullets coming at you and fewer lives and continues. You can spend a lot of time trying to beat it. Now for the not so great news. First off, it is expensive. This cart is fast approaching $100 USD, which is a lot. It also is an arcade game port, meaning single-sitting playthroughs. Depending on how you feel about that playthrough, you may not really pick it up enough to warrant a $100 purchase. And the arcade version is readily available on Switch and PS4. It is a download, mind you, so if you wanted to own the game physically, the original cartridge would probably be the best way to do it. So a mixed bag when it comes to value, but I will say that any great SNES collection should include a copy of Sunset Riders. Whew. Okay, time to sunset this video and give this thing a score. With everything above considered, Sunset Riders gallops in with a rootin' 8.8 out of 10. A surprisingly faithful arcade port that costs a lot, but has more than enough personality, fun, and excitement to make up for it. Have fun.
Now there's a job that must be done, but many men won't take, to keep the peace across this mighty land. An outlaw and a killer has a reckoning that's due, and so we saddle up and ride with gun in hand. And many men will tremble while our bullets surely rip. We face the gunfire, but we carry on. And you'll be buried with your money when you're dead and gone. We're Sunset Riders, we'll ride until it's done. We're Sunset Riders, we'll ride until it's done.